Hey, what's up guys? Jeff Walker here. As I'm sure you guys know by now, I got the opportunity to be one of the test riders for Michael Lindsay's 2020 450 shootout out in California. So I got the awesome opportunity to ride all the new 2020 450s. If you guys haven't seen it already, Michael Lindsay put together the official 450 shootout video over on his channel, so you guys can go check that out right now. His video more focused on combining all the thoughts of all the test riders and put them together and kind of give an average result for all the bikes, but I thought you guys might like to hear my individual thoughts on the bikes. So to supplement Michael's official video, I thought I would make my own videos breaking down each of the bikes individually, kind of giving you guys my thoughts on each ones, what I like and what I don't like. So welcome to episode 1 of that exact series. So as I was riding all the bikes out in California, I was making notes of what I like and dislike about them, and I kept them all on my phone, took a bunch of GoPro video, which I'm sure you guys have already seen a little bit of that, and then I also got some third person that Michael's photographer had taken while we were out there. I'm going to be releasing these videos to you guys in the reverse order of how I ranked them. So today we're going to be talking about the bike that in my opinion is the worst out of the bunch, and that is the 2020 Suzuki RMZ450. So the first thing I want to say about this bike is that yes, although it has finished last in like every shootout for the past however many years, and I ranked it last and it got last in this year's shootout, it's not a terrible bike, especially given the price point for it. MSRP, it's not that much cheaper than the other bikes, but they're always doing big rebates on it to bring the price down, and if you buy last year's model, you can get them for a really good price. And overall, it's not that much worse. I'd say at most, it's like 10 to 15% worse than any of the other brands, so it's not like it's completely years behind the other bikes, and there's a couple small upgrades that you could do to get it probably pretty close and still have it in that same price point as buying one of the other bikes stock, which is a huge plus for a lot of people because I think the general consumer isn't worried about going absolutely as fast as they can. They're just worried about having fun. So if you can have fun for a lot cheaper, I mean, it's hard to get a better value than the Suzuki. So that's just one little thing I wanted to say before I got into my dislikes on the bike. And I'm gonna go over the dislikes first, and then I'll jump into what I like about it. So dislikes, starting with the suspension, this thing is crazy rigid. It's like everything you ever hear about how rigid it is, it's true. And that's not only talking about just how the suspension is set up, but also the chassis. The chassis is just very, very rigid. You can feel every single bump on the track, like dare I say every pebble on the track. Even just riding from the pit up to the track, every tiny little tractor mark in the dirt, like every little rock that we would hit, I just felt it deflecting. And I thought it was gonna be really good because being like a faster guy, you wanna have your suspension stiffer. So I was thinking like, dude, this could actually turn out pretty good, but it's not like a Pro National stiff type of suspension. It's just so rigid that it just deflects off of everything really weird. And it's just really jarring. It's not a very pleasant ride, especially on the harder pack tracks that we were riding out in California. I think where this bike could excel is on some of the softer terrain out on the East Coast. Maybe if you get it on a sandy track where, you know, the stiffer your chassis is, the harder you can push on some of those loamier tracks where you have a lot of traction, because the bike isn't going to try and like roll over on you. So I think on a loamier type track, or like even in the sandier berms that we were finding out at Kauai Creek, that's where I really noticed that the bike handled really well. But overall on a hard pack track that has those little chatter bumps, did not handle those well at all. Definitely extremely rigid. I think if you're a much heavier guy, maybe it would work out okay for you, but if you're on the smaller end of the weight scale, definitely think that right out of the box the handling is not going to be ideal for you. You can only change the chassis rigidity so much, but I know like getting some titanium motor mounts would probably help a lot. So those are definitely some things that I would do right off the bat if I was gonna go out and buy a Suzuki RMZ450. The suspension was, however, really balanced. The front to rear, it just sat really nice and level. It didn't feel like the front end was sacking out or the rear end was sacking out anywhere, and just the ride height felt pretty good. Like, just when I got it off the stand and sat on it immediately, it just felt like it was a really nice comfortable height. It didn't feel stink bug or choppered out or anything. The ergos are really good. I like the bar bend that they have on it. The seat is a nice shape, although for some reason the seat was extremely slippery, like way more noticeable than any of the other bikes. And on a 450, that's actually pretty important because you have all that power and you're trying to stay forward on the bike while you're accelerating, and that slippery seat made it really hard to do that. I don't believe we put any sprays like SC1 or anything on it, but that could be the case. So maybe that was our bad, but it definitely seemed like the seat was really slippery. But overall, really liked the ergonomics of it, felt pretty comfortable on it. Even me being a taller guy, I felt like I fit it pretty well. I didn't feel huge or anything like I did on some of the other bikes, so that was pretty good. But yeah, definitely for about 95% of the track, I would say it didn't handle the best. However, there were certain corners when I would get into them that I noticed the Suzuki handled better than any of the other brands, and that was really flat, smooth corners where there wasn't a rut and it wasn't like braking bumps hadn't formed yet. I think just all the weight transfer over onto the forks really keeps the forks nice and planted, and it just sticks really well. Like I was finding myself not washing the front end out at all. It allowed the front end to just stick, and I could counter steer really nicely, and the front end would just stick all the way around the corner, and I could kind of modulate the throttle and just let the back end drift just a couple degrees out behind me, and it would just track really nicely. So in some of those flatter like berms that didn't have ruts or bumps or anything, I was really able to like flow around those really nice. But as soon as there started to get braking bumps, it kind of threw all that off, so it was really only good in the really smooth parts of the track. Definitely later in the day, I wasn't feeling those sensations anymore. Moving on to the motor, I was actually pretty surprised after looking at the numbers from the dynos. I had basically no hopes at all for the motor on this thing. It makes the least amount of horsepower in the class by a pretty good margin, and then given the weight of it too, you know, low power, high weight, you just kind of figure that it's going to be a pretty slow pig out there. But I was pretty surprised. It has a lot of good lower end grunt, and kind of like bottom to mid range is really good. So I'm kind of just supporting the fact that I think this bike would be pretty good on like a loamier track where you need some grunt to pull yourself out of those deep ruts or these sandier corners. I think it would really excel there. Unfortunately, the tracks that we rode it on out in California were pretty high speed. You kind of wanted to be riding high up in the RPMs, so it didn't necessarily shine there, but there were one or two corners that were a little softer where you really needed to use some bottom end to come out of the corner and hit a little step up coming out of them, and the Suzuki was great there. It had a really good hit on the bottom, pulled decently up to the mid, and then that's where it kind of faded out. It definitely does not like to be revved. Kind of echoing Michael's words, it has a really old school 450 rev limiter. Seems like a lot of the brands, especially like KTM and Husky, are starting to go to like a more of like a 250 style rev where it gets to like really fast high rev limiter, and you can just kind of leave it off the rev limiter and not really worry about it too much. The Suzuki definitely feels really old school. It feels like when you hit the rev limiter, it's pretty low and it's violent. It's basically like holding onto a machine gun. It just feels like you're trying to hold onto a jackhammer when you're bouncing off the rev limiter. It's just really violent. It creates a lot of tremors through the entire chassis, and you can really feel it. Really upsets the motor. Even revving it in the air is kind of scary, just the sounds and the vibrations that it makes on you. So this bike definitely likes to be short shift, does not like to hit that upper rev. And I kind of definitely like to ride more in the mid to high RPMs, which is why I think I like the Honda so much. And this was definitely not a bike that you wanted to ride up there. Kind of echoing what I said before, if you're, you know, on the bigger, heavier side and you're just really smooth, pick out the good smooth lines and everything, I think the Suzuki could probably be a pretty good bike, especially with a couple upgrades right off the showroom floor, which if you buy a Suzuki, you can afford those upgrades. So the one thing I will say about the Suzuki's handling that was nice was that it was very consistent. Not good, but consistent. Like when you found out the little things that were not good about it, you could kind of tell when they were gonna happen and avoid those situations. So I could kind of choose my lines and just kind of adapt my style to the Suzuki to make it not so bad. So at the very end of the day at Fox Raceway, our second day on the bikes, it was pretty much after everyone was done riding and the track was really beat up and rough. I told myself I was going to give the Suzuki a fair chance, take it out for like a 20-minute moto, just put laps in, get used to it, and see if it was really as bad as I was imagining it was in my head. And the first couple laps were pretty terrible. I was like, why am I doing this? This is terrible. And just with every lap, I got a little bit more comfortable on it, could pick out where it was going to buck. Like I said, it was actually really predictable, and I was able to pick some lines and just adapt my style in a way that I could avoid those really gnarly spots. And by the end of the moto, I'd say probably the last like 3 or 4 laps, I was really flowing on it pretty good. And honestly, it didn't feel like it was too much slower than any of the other bikes, and my lap times were actually pretty decent on it. And when I came back in on it, the first thing I said to Michael is, I was like, dude, this thing's really not that bad. Like once I got used to it, it was honestly pretty good. And he was like, yeah, it might feel that way, but go take the Husky back out now. And so I hopped on the Husky, and the difference was crazy. Like, yeah, you can probably get going the same speed on the Suzuki if you're really careful about it and pick your lines really well, but I hopped on the Husky and it didn't matter what lines I was taking, what bumps I was hitting, I was still like a second faster on it a lap. So yeah, it is a lot cheaper, but I mean, I don't think it matters who you are gonna go a little bit slower on the Suzuki. If that doesn't matter to you, it's a great value. You can definitely get a bunch of upgrades to make it a really good bike. Also, just talking about the overall like build quality of the Suzuki, I felt like some of the parts were just a little bit more cheap feeling than some of the other bikes. Basically, the first thing I do every time I get on a new bike is check the free play and the throttle, and I like to adjust it out so that there is literally zero free play. And so the first thing I did when I got on the Suzuki was start to adjust it out, and the little adjuster screw on the throttle cable like stripped out immediately right when I started to twist it. So first impression on the just build quality of the bike wasn't great. Like, it just felt like some of the parts were a little bit cheaper. Wasn't too big of a fan of that. And then also, of course, you have to factor in the fact that it's a kickstart bike. That doesn't really bother me too much. I don't really mind kicking the bike, but in a day and age where every single other brand does have an electric start, you gotta kind of start making that switch over because people start demanding it. And I know that does bother a lot of people not having the electric start. For me, it wasn't such an issue, but definitely something to take into consideration. If someone told me I had to race a Pro National on its stock, I think it would do just fine. For most people, that's not a decision that they're gonna have to make. So if I was just a weekend warrior guy, maybe a vet rider, a little on the heavier side, really smooth style, I think this is honestly a pretty good bike. Unfortunately, just being a pretty good bike isn't gonna do it in this day and age with how good the other bikes are, which is why the Suzuki ended up 6th. Like I said, it's not terrible. It's just, you know, that 10 to 15% worse than all the other bikes in every other category. There's not really one category where I could say it's better than any of the other bikes, but it's not super far behind, just a little bit. And I think with some solid upgrades, I think the Suzuki wouldn't be bad at all. So anyways, guys, those are my thoughts on the Suzuki. Hope you enjoy this little video, and hope you guys are looking forward to the other bikes that are to come. Next up's gonna be the Kawasaki, because I ranked that one 5th. So keep an eye out for that video. But for sure, this is just one guy's opinion. Of course, I'm not the average case either. I'm definitely on the taller side. I'm at a professional racing level, so I probably don't fit the bill that most of the consumers do. So definitely don't just take my word for it. Do some more research. Watch all the other people who are making videos out there. Like I said, Michael's got some videos. He's got the official shootout, and then he also released a video just like I'm doing, but he took in the opinions of all the test riders from the day. So if you guys want to go get some more opinions on it, head over to Michael's channel. The tab will be up right now. You guys can click and go check that out. But yeah, those are my thoughts on it. Hope you guys enjoyed, and hopefully you guys are looking forward to the next one. Peace out, guys.
You want to kick it with Suzuki?
No.